Have you ever felt that one of your direct reports has completely misperceived you and left you questioning your own reality? If so, you'll want to listen to today's episode. Welcome to Bad Boss Confessional. I'm Beth Fahey, and if leadership came with a manual, this podcast would be the section titled What Not to Do. I've spent over 3 decades in leadership, and trust me, I've made enough mistakes to fill a whole season. This show is a place where leaders tell the truth about the cringeworthy moments we all wish we could take back, and how those very moments made us stronger. Meet Miranda Barrett, founder of Mind the Mic Consulting, which helps events and speakers deliver exceptional audience learning. She's worked around crazy visionary entrepreneurs for the past 15 years, including 10 years on staff at the Entrepreneurs Organization. Welcome, Miranda.
Thank you, Beth. When you say 15 years around visionary entrepreneurs, I just think like dog years. Is that like the equivalent of like 80 human years doing that?
I think so because, entrepreneurs take a toll for sure. Uh, I want to thank you for attending this podcast. We just got to know each other recently at the EOS conference. You were very helpful.
We got a little handsy there, didn't we?
We did get a little handsy. Miranda duct taped a microphone to my dress because it was not cooperating. And so we got to know each other very quickly, very well.
That's one of my favorite parts of events, catching a speaker just before they're going on stage and their eyes are kind of wild and everything's kind of flying around and it's like, okay, we're gonna do what it takes to get this microphone out wherever it needs to go one way or another. And hopefully there's no HR complaints in the process.
Yeah. Note to self, don't wear a dress without any method of hanging a mic.
Or if you do, make sure that I am nearby with a roll of duct tape.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyway, it was lovely to get to know you, and we've since had a couple of conversations. I'd love to hear your history as a boss prior to working at the EOS conference and helping us there. What did you do before that?
For sure. Well, I think my history as a boss dates to my first couple of weeks at the Entrepreneurs Organization, where I started in, gosh, I think 2007, very small organization at the time, about a staff of about 50. When I started, I had my onboarding checklist, the things that you're supposed to do as a new hire to learn your way around. And one of the final items in my onboarding checklist in my first few weeks of starting this job was to hire a coordinator. And I had never hired anyone in my life. I had never managed anyone in my life, aside from maybe the odd intern here or there at other previous jobs. And I think I put a job posting on Craigslist because that's what we did back then. And got some resumes in and it extended an offer to someone. And that was literally my first experience as a boss, was checking a box on my onboarding to-dos without fully realizing what kind of a journey I was starting in that process.
Yeah, onboarding, right? I mean, that's one of the things that I hear my clients talking about all the time is like our onboarding process needs to get better. We need to work through that. And it's so often we're just putting people into a position and, it's the fire hose method of training. We're just like, and so it sounds like you experienced that yourself.
I mean, isn't that crazy to think about? Like your to-dos, like, find the bathroom, logged into the email system. Oh, and bring another human on to join this team that you don't fully understand yet.
Yeah.
And I was like, like I'm an A+ student. I'm like, check, check, check. Like, okay, I guess we'll figure this one out too. Find a coordinator. And I got incredibly lucky with that individual who ended up staying at the organization long past me. And then I brought him on to join me at a subsequent organization.
Well, obviously you did a good enough job then.
The universe lined up for me on that one.
So have you enjoyed being a boss over the last few years?
I think I've come to enjoy it more in the last few years. There were times when I was managing much larger staff teams when it probably the management side was not my favorite. I would say I'm not naturally a nurturing coaching kind of person. Like I'm a high execution, high D, get stuff done kind of person. And I like the fastest path to that. And the coaching side, the growing people side, I completely understand the importance of it and I value it, but it's not where I would naturally choose to spend my time if I had sort of a blank slate to map out my day. I love collaborating with people. but I also love, working on projects and delivering probably more than the growing side.
Hmm. That sounds a lot like me, what you just described. Do you know your Colby?
Have it somewhere. I wish I could tell
Yeah,
you, but
no,
I
sorry, I
don't.
should
Yeah.
have prepped you for that, but I'm just like this is like what we nerd out in EOS about all the time. It's like, "What's your Colby?" So that we can understand how people are wired like that. It's like shorthand. It's interesting, right? It's like you value all these things about the people interaction. You definitely are a people person, right? It's just,
Absolutely.
I think coaching comes naturally to some people and it doesn't to others. And for those of us who, probably a lot of us out there, that it doesn't come naturally, it's a skill that you need to learn if you want to grow in an organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've been lucky to have teams and led teams where there was that high trust relationship, and they knew that about me. They knew that I wasn't naturally a chatty person. If I was asking about their weekend, it's because I sort of felt like I had to. And one employee had a joke that she could tell when my eyes would sort of drift up to the clock over on the wall that it was time to, stop chit-chatting and get on with their day. And I really greatly appreciated that the team recognized that that was not me trying to be a jerk. It was just my tendency to like, let's move on and get our work done.
Yep. Well, we bring our whole selves to work all the time, right?
The good, bad, and ugly.
Exactly. Exactly. You know the point of the podcast, right? This is where we share a story about our past, something that we wish we could do over, take back, a cringeworthy moment, as it were, that it is something that we struggle with still and wish we could rewrite. So, do you have something like that in your past, something that you'd be willing to share with us?
I do, and it's something so deeply personal that I needed a few years to get space from it before I could even talk about it without getting super emotional.
Ooh.
So, which I think is probably a sign that it's perfect for this conversation. And I've also come to learn that when I have that crazy overreaction, it's because I feel like something is in violation of my core values. And that's probably why
Mm.
it's so emotional for me, right? So the story that I will share is I was part of the staff team at EO during some periods of tremendous change, right? Where the staff was being reorganized, departments were changing, teams were changing, functions were changing. I used to joke that whenever I came back from maternity leave, I'd find that I had a new job. So I stopped having kids because it was too disruptive to my career. But that had happened, and I'd come back and discovered that I had a new team. And I was really excited that one of the new people on my team was this really well respected, very high achiever person at a kind of a mid level manager. Everyone loved working with her. She was really known for being someone who gets stuff done. And I considered her to be a personal friend as well. She'd been over to my house on different occasions. And I was so excited to have her on my team because I felt like I just had this wingman, right? Through
Mm.
all this change that I was going to be navigating, someone who could keep up with my crazy speed through all this change and help me rebuild the department that had just been restructured. And when I think about it now, I had so much that needed to get done. And that this is in no means an excuse on my part because what happened happened. And I was moving fast and breaking things for sure because I had been given that mandate of, here's the numbers you need to hit, here's the goals, here's the direction, just go make it happen. And in my mind, the team understood that that was our mandate, right? That we had to move fast. And looking back in hindsight, I really wasn't doing as good a job as I needed to explaining why we were changing things quickly, why we were sort of doing things a little bit half baked, that, B plus work had to be good enough. And
Mm.
doing B plus work is really hard for A players. I think it's really demoralizing for them. And in this particular situation, it was more demoralizing than I realized. And it was a complete shock to me when this person suddenly gave notice that she wanted to leave. And she'd been with the organization, I think 8 or 9 years. And it was a huge shock. And I knew immediately that it reflected very poorly on me as a leader. And tried to talk her into staying, what was happening going on. And it was just very emotional and didn't want to talk about it. And the real gut punch for me, Beth, was getting the debrief survey, that they do with HR as they're leaving. And I was described as being an unethical leader. And for me, that was just this tremendous, like, gut punch, kick in the head, whatever you want to
Mm.
call it. Looking back, the reason I think that hurt so much was that ethics and integrity are so incredibly important to me as a value, the way that I was brought up, the way that I pride myself on working. And so to hear that someone whose opinion I really valued and respected considered me to be unethical was probably just about the worst thing that anyone could have said to me. And I remember I was in Costa Rica for a meeting when I got that feedback from HR. And I was with some other members of EO, fortunately, people who knew me and trusted me. And I pulled it out. We were at a breakfast buffet, and I just started bawling in the restaurant and just hysterical to a degree. I just couldn't believe that this had happened. There was the shame. There was the, oh my God, what does HR think about me now? This is out there. I can't believe I let this person down in this way. Am I unethical? And just that combination of events just left me feeling so terrible. And it really years before I could talk about it in a productive way and just really sit with it and say, okay, this was her perception. This is her reality. I may not agree with it. I feel like I had a different experience and a different reality, but I can't deny the fact that this was what she was experiencing. And for her to share it with HR, she must have been feeling it pretty strongly. So there was a huge learning for me there that I have to make sure that the team really understands why I'm doing the things I'm doing, and that I'm willing to listen to other viewpoints, and I'm willing to be challenged on the way that I'm doing things. And I really want it to be a safe environment for anyone to ever speak up if they think that I'm behaving in an unethical way. Because I think one of the things that also kills me is that she didn't bring that up to me sooner, because I would have loved the opportunity as a leader to have that recognition sooner and
Mm.
explain, why I was doing what I was doing, and how we were operating as a team. Find out about it after I could do anything was really hard too.
Yeah, it's these experiences that inform then our next iteration of ourselves in a role. How did that show up for you post her leaving?
I think it paralyzed me, for if I'm being honest, Beth. Like, it made it really tough for me to keep making big, bold steps as a leader, because I was really worried that this perception might extend beyond this person to other people. And I was able to have a few conversations with trusted peers about this, saying, how did I let this happen? How do I make sure that this isn't what other members of the team are feeling? And how can I make sure that
Mhm.
this doesn't happen again in the future? Because I intend to always be in work environments that are a little bit chaotic and very fast moving. And I want to make sure that I'm not creating the situation over and over again. And there's this wonderful quote that I've always loved, that if you think you're leading and you turn around and no one is following, you're just out for a walk. And isn't that great?
It
And
is
it
a
was
great
really
one.
clear, I had thought I was leading, but at least when it came to this person, I was not only out for a walk. In her mind, I was walking everybody right off a cliff.
Ah, I can definitely share that experience also. I've had many situations like that where thought I was being clear, thought I was communicating well, and being perceived in the right way. And it's so hard when you get that feedback. One of the things that we do in EOS at the annual is a one thing exercise, is what we call it. And this comes from the five dysfunctions of a team. And during this exercise, people provide feedback, positive feedback. Here's something I admire about you. And then they provide a piece of negative feedback, something that, because you care about this person, you're going to tell them that they're stuck with this thing. And I remember receiving the feedback that all I said were negative things. The only time that I opened my mouth is if I was correcting somebody. And I thought, that is not true. That is not true. That can't possibly be true. But for those people, it was true. Later on, as I'm teaching Great Boss workshops, I find that people need to hear 6 to 1, 6 positives to 1 negative. If the color of that icing is wrong, or that's not how that was supposed to be decorated, or you spelled that name wrong, people they're focused on all of this negative stuff because that's kind of how we're wired as human beings, is that we're focused on these things. But getting that feedback can paralyze you then, because I remember afterwards, after I got that feedback, I like made it my life's work to make sure that I was saying positive things, to the point that I might have been a little bit of a cheerleader kind of boss, and where I was saying a bunch of positive things that, had no meaning or were vacuous. I think it's very common for people to over index on some of the feedback that they get because they're so fearful that they're going to screw it up again. So thanks for sharing that. I mean, that I think is very nuanced story that people can really relate to.
No, absolutely. And I do, now that I have some distance with it, I'm able to look at it through kind of a different lens. I think when these things happen that are just highly emotionally charged, it's hard to take the learning out in the 3 to 6 months or maybe even longer. And this, I mean, it gives you an idea how much this sat with me because it probably happened more than 10 years ago, at least. And when I sat down to think about what kind of story I wanted to share with you, that one still popped up and still triggered this, like, oh, like in my gut, like, again, the idea of, with lack of ethics or integrity or whatever it is. And it's clear that that was just such a trigger for me.
Yeah. So now, as a leader, do you have direct reports in your
I
current
do.
job?
We are a growing team of, we'll say four. Yes. Small but mighty.
Okay. And do you find yourself really digging into the why, like bringing some of this back, some of the positive things that you learned from this experience?
Very much so, and honestly, there's a lot of EOS tools that have helped me as well, which I didn't have the benefit of back in those days. And so with that experience, I really learned a lot about making sure you're bringing the team along on the journey with you. And as someone who just really loves to move fast, 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 taking the time to make sure the team understands the direction, is celebrating the wins, sharing all the good feedback, just taking the time to do a little bit more of the sparkly things that help everyone feel appreciated and understand the direction. And for me, that also means just being very transparent about finances, which was something it took me a while to get my head around, as a business owner. Like, how much of the finances do you share with employees? And for me, valuing the ethics and the integrity the way I do is like, okay, we're gonna go open book here, because that's the way that I can sit in integrity with myself, and the team is in a better position to help us grow.
Yep. We're always evolving, right? We're always trying to get better. I mean, I don't hide it. I'm 59. I'm still learning. I'm still trying to get better at this leadership thing. I joke around all the time. If you want to learn something, teach it. I mean, I can't believe somebody gave me the keys to the car on Great Boss workshops, because I'm like, you got to be kidding. I'm the worst person. But because we've had these experiences and we can tell relatable stories, I think that it lowers the barriers for people of feeling ashamed about it, or I guess I'm broken. I'm not meant to be a boss, or I'm just that way. This is a skill that you can learn. You can get better over time. And I think checking in with who you are, so this high level of integrity that you're speaking of, okay, how will that show up in my next chapter? How will I get better at that? How do I become the person that I always wanted to be or envisioned myself as a leader? I have a coach that I talk to all the time, at least once a week. And, we talk about, like, imagine yourself as the person that you want to be, that best version of yourself. Imagine that's you now. How do you behave? How do you act? And so it sounds like that you did that in with this open book and with all the new things that you're doing in your
Well, I
business.
would never begin to say that I have arrived at that point, but I do like to think it's just so much fun, isn't it? That every day we get to wake up and start over and to take the lessons we learned, or the hits that we absorbed the previous day, and learn from it and take another run at it. And I think that's part of the fun. And, like, yes, the story I shared was a major learning point, but so was all the positives that came in the many years after that. And those are lessons as well. And every day we wake up and do our best again.
Exactly. So feedback, has that changed for you, the feedback that you now provide to your direct reports? How are you handling like annual reviews or quarterly conversations so that you can get ahead? I mean, that's the nice thing about EOS is we teach you these tools so that now you can have those conversations prior to it becoming blowing up in your face. But how does that look in your current organization or what was your past experience?
No, for sure. Well, I think let's start with employee reviews. In previous roles I've had, it was something that was highly, highly structured and defined. And sometimes using templates that were probably 20 years old that no one had updated, right? That would take hours and hours and hours to do. And when I had four, five, six direct reports, employee review time was something that I dreaded so much because it would also come at the end of the organization's fiscal year. I had a million other things to do. And suddenly I was presented with this no joke 30-question field form to be filled out in detail on each of my five, six direct reports, and you're talking about like a significant, like multi-day exercise. And I'll be honest, Beth, like my goal with those was just get through them as quick as possible because it felt like this major time suck. But I also realized that for my employees, annual reviews were a really big deal. And sometimes during my time at EO, salary increases were tied to scores on the review, which makes
Mhm.
sense, but it was also, sort of this added dimension of weightiness to it. And it was always tough when I would come up with sort of he answered my questions, the employee would answer the same questions, and then we would identify where there were some really significant gaps. And in some cases, there was a challenge where I had just tried to blow through that form as quickly as possible because I had 15 other things that I needed to be doing, and I didn't take it as seriously as I should have. And an employee came prepared with 12 months of their accomplishments, and I probably walked away looking like I hadn't really noticed how hard they were working, and I hated that. But at the same time,
Mm.
just sort of a victim of the system in some ways. But it was also just important to me to realize that, especially A players who take their performance so seriously, you have to match that level of seriousness with noticing when they do great work, which is a lot of the time, calling that out, the recognition that people want. And I had to take the employee reviews as seriously as they did.
And so now when you do feedback and annual reviews, is it as complicated as it was previously or
I would say it's a lot simpler. I would never in a million years use the kind of the forms that I was handed 20 years ago for reviews. I think having a high trust environment where you can provide feedback on the spot and take it in the spirit of, we're all tackling a problem, not each other. That was a great expression I love, attack the problem, not the person. And I like to think in my
Mhm.
current team, we are all, and it's a very, very high trust environment. We're moving at the speed of trust. We're working very, very fast. And when something's wrong, we tend to just add it to an issue for our level 10 meeting. And we attack it as a problem, not as a person. And if it is a person challenge, then obviously that's between me and that individual. But for the most part, anything that we feel that someone is performing in a way that's not helpful is related back to, a broken process more so than a lack of motivation or effort.
Yeah, and that's great. Most of the time when we have issues that are on the issues list, it's either people or process. And so often I think we're ready to point the finger at somebody and say, it's a them problem. They're lazy. They don't do their work, blah, blah, blah. And we make it about the person instead of what the issue is. And when you frame it as this is the issue, how do we fix this? What's the root cause of this issue when we're asking those questions? It gets everybody into a much healthier place a lot faster. And frequently, they are process issues. It's the process is broken. We forgot about a handoff. We forgot to communicate this out after this step happens. Stuff like that in, is very common. And this is why it's so important to pull these processes out when it is actually a process issue. I mean, oftentimes I'm talking to my teams and like, well, did you look at the
They're like,
process?
"A what?"
They're like, well, oh, yeah, you mean that thing that we put in the Google Drive, like, a year and a half ago that nobody's looked at in a year and a half? But identifying that that's the issue is important.
Yeah, it just makes it safer, it's an easier conversation to have. And then also for me, even when it was just me launching the company, defining core values was something I did almost like first out of the gate, right? Like with the first client I took on, having those very clear to me, captured, outlined on the website. And I've recorded a video of myself explaining each one and what it means to me as part of our I'll say onboarding in air quotes because we're so small, but I assume that's going to change at some point. And I really want to make sure that the company's core values, which really tie to things that I care very, very deeply about, like integrity and trust, are front and center for everybody.
Awesome. Great. Okay, so I'd love to know now if you could tell us a little bit about your business and what you do and how we can find you and what you're working on currently.
Yeah, so my company is Mind the Mic Consulting. As you shared, we work with individual speakers and events on building great learning programs. We work with individual speakers on presentations and speaker marketing. And I think this company really traces back to my why of relationships based on trust, because I would be in the back of so many events and session rooms where I would see speakers that were missing the mark and wasting their audience's time. And that would hit me on such a deeply gut personal level of just sort of anger and remorse and everything else to see an audience's time wasted. And in my mind, I'm always, whenever I watch a speaker's presentation, I'm thinking like, how would I do this differently? How would I change up those slides? How would I add more interactivity and videos and everything else? And I just can't turn that part of my brain off like a virus. And I decided just to lean in on that. So we absolutely love supporting speakers to be their best, whether that's building speeches or working with them on how to stand out and get booked more.
Hang tight. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Let's be honest, hiring the right people is hard. That's why I love Titus Talent Strategies. Their whole person hiring approach helps you find and keep A players who align with your values, and they back it with an industry leading guarantee. Best part? Titus Talent Strategies is included in the entrepreneurial toolkit for companies running on EOS. Check them out at titustalent.com/EOS. Do you love running on EOS? Try Streti, the EOS platform people love. Native integrations and extra features help you manage people, projects, process, and engagement. Connected to your favorite EOS tools and all in one place. You love EOS. It's time to love the platform you're running it on. Try Streti free at streti.com. That's STRETY.com. Streti, the EOS platform people love. And now back to my conversation with Miranda. I ask all my guests this, and I don't prep anybody for it, so I'm going to catch you off guard a little bit. So, if you were to get a tattoo on your body somewhere that reminded you of the thing that you wanted to always be mindful of, always be working on, what would your tattoo be and where would it be located?
Ooh, what a fun question. Okay, well, I will share I have zero tattoos right now, and I don't know that that's going to change anytime soon.
Be.
If I were to be forced to get a tattoo somewhere on my body, it would be the expression, trust your feet. And the reason that's important to me, I learned how to rock climb when I was 19 years old. I was a camp counselor in Western North Carolina. And when you're hanging onto the side of the rock, your inclination is just to lean in and grip the rock as tight as you can and get your whole body lined up against it, right? So you feel like you're going to fall. But the most stable position when you're on the side of a rock is to lean back and create that angle with yourself so you've got better purchase on it. So it's actually the act of leaning away and trusting your feet that makes you more secure. So I remember the camp director who was belaying me down at the ground, just shouting at me in a Southern accent, trust your feet. And that has just stuck with me for 20, gosh, almost 30 years now, almost 30 years now, just as something that I want to always remember because it turns out, we're actually safer and sturdier when we can lean back and trust our feet. Now, as far as where I would put that, somewhere that you wouldn't be able to see it. And we'll leave it at that.
I love it. I love asking this tattoo question because it's just it is fun. It is fun. And of course, I don't have tattoos either. I'm too afraid. It's the commitment.
Yeah, no, I don't know that I mean, that expression I think will always be with me, but whether I want to be like seeing that on my like wrinkled arm when I'm 90, we'll see.
Hilarious. Well, thanks so much for being with us today, Miranda, and sharing your story. It's so good to get to know you a little bit better. And I hope to see you again at a future conference. And look for Miranda's contact information in our show notes. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Beth. This was great fun.
Thanks to Miranda for sharing her vulnerable story about understanding the needs of her individual team members. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share with friends who need to hear this. Thanks for listening to Bad Boss Confessional. We'll see you next week.